Today we're learning default parameters. They give your function arguments a backup value so your code keeps working even when something's missing. If this helps you out, give it a like and subscribe. I post beginner-friendly JavaScript content every week. Let's get started. Now, a default parameter is useful whenever an argument is not included in a function. And you will pass this default value inside the parameter list. And I have an example here to show that. So we have a function of greet. And when we run this greet function, we have a name parameter and we're using Alex as an argument. And when we run this, we get back hello Alex. And you'll notice that if we don't include an argument, we get back hello undefined. And so the way to avoid this is using a default parameter. And we can instead add, name equals stranger. And when we run this, we get hello stranger. And so you can start to see the value of a default parameter. And one thing I'll mention is with default parameters, here we use just a string, but it doesn't have to be a string. You can use numbers, arrays, or even function calls, and I want to show those examples so you get a better idea of this in practice. Here we have a function calculating the total for taxes, and we have a price parameter, we have a tax parameter as well, and the default value is 10%. Now, when we run this function, the first time is just including the price. And so we're going to use this default value. And then the second time, we're going to use 20% for the tax. And when we run this, we will get back 110 and 120. I also mentioned that you can use function calls. And I wanted to show that as an example. Here we have a function of get current user. And what's happening is we're creating a post. So let's say you have a website and you want to, you have admin users that are writing content. And what you want to have as a default is whenever someone creates a post, if that user doesn't specify who the author is, it's going to go ahead and default for that current user, that admin user. And so you'll see that here we have function create post. We will give title a default value of untitled if it's not specified. Content, no content if there's no content entered, and then author will be running this function, get current user. Now, when we run this, you will see this in action. We're returning title, content, and author. Normally, in this type of instance, it would be in the form of an object, but just to show you in the console, I'm just displaying it, these values like so, in a template literal. And you can see why JavaScript is awesome. JavaScript is great for the web. The admin user for the first one, because we don't specify it. And then we see admin again, along with all the other default values because nothing's specified for this part 2. Now, one thing you might be wondering is why we're returning admin at example.com here instead of just putting it as a default value right away in author. Why are we running this function? And so the reason is normally you would have a bit more logic here to detect that it is, the current user is going to be dynamic. It's going to be changing. So this email won't always be the same. And so for this example, we're making it really simple, but normally for that, having that dynamic type of function, you're going to need a function to run and change that default value on the fly. So that is the next example. Now, the one thing I want to mention too, as we go into this next example, is it's important to be careful with the parameter order. You can't skip values in the middle unless you explicitly pass undefined. So let's look at and explore what that exactly means. Here we have an example. And in this example, we have a function of register user with a parameter of name with a default value of guest, a parameter of is admin with a default value of false, and we're showing this back in the console. We want to show the name and whether or not they're an admin. Now, you'll see down below we have different options. We have calling register user without any arguments, calling register user with just Alex, and then the third one, we are specifying undefined for the first value and then true for the second. And so when we run this, you'll see that in order to get guest, we have to place undefined here. And then if we want to modify the second parameter, we have to put undefined first and then specify that second value, that second argument here. And so you see that in action. We get guest false. Those are the two default values for this first one. Alex, false, only false is the default value for the second, and then guest is going to be the first default value, but true is going to be changing for is admin. Now, as a final example, I want to show something more practical for everyday use here. So here we have a function where we are fetching post. And so when you're building a site, let's say it's a blog website, you might have some pagination on the site where users are accessing different types of blogs as they're navigating throughout your site. And so we've essentially created some pagination here. We're just console.login. We're not fetching anything or doing anything beyond that, but just to give you an idea of how this would work. So we have fetch post, and we're essentially fetching pages. And so sometimes if a user doesn't specify the page that they want to go to, or how many items that they want per page, how many posts per page, we're going to go ahead and set a default value for that. And that's what we're doing here. And so you will see for just simplicity for the user, we're going to start off with, if the user goes to the blog page, we're just fetching page 1 and making it 10 posts per page. And those are the default values. Now, the user could go to page 2, and so we see that adjusted. So page 2 with 10 posts per page. And then a user could even want to go to page 3 and then change the limit to 5 posts per page. And you see that here. Let's recap what we learned. Default parameters let you set fallback values for your function arguments. That way, you avoid unexpected undefineds. Your functions work even when arguments are missing, and you can even use functions as defaults when your values need to be dynamic.